Hello everyone, and in this lesson we're going to take everything that we had learned in lesson 1, which is covering all the various 2D patterns and tiling and stuff. We'll add a little more on top of it and create like a tileable texture like this, okay? And then we're going to take it into Substance Painter and build like a proper shader out of this. And if you've done everything right, we will end up with, something like this. Now this is an Octane, but it doesn't really matter. Like I do most of my shader testing in Octane standalone because I can just take a sphere and assign a material. I'm done. Like I don't need to go through Houdini for it. But this is just a simple PBR material, right? Like I have color, I have roughness, metallic, normal, and displacement, right? Like nothing fancy. But the point being, like at the end of it, we should have like a fully usable PBR shader out of it. Okay, so Octane isn't important for this. This is just the final material, but you will need Substance Painter. Okay, like if you want to fully build a proper shader out of the maps that we'll create from Houdini, you will need access to Substance Painter. Okay, so just make sure that you have that. Okay, so to get started, right, like I have a new file, I'll create a height field. Okay, so the reason to use a height field is pretty simple. Like it's actually a 2D volume, and being a volume, it's technically resolution free. It's sort of the same reason why I like working with VDBs, right? Like they're resolution free. And also because of the height field output node, you can export maps a lot quicker, okay, and a lot more simpler. Okay, so the first and foremost issue that you will end up facing when you take a height field is you can't apply UVs to it. Okay, so how do you essentially assign textures? And the other thing is height fields can't visualize color. Okay, so what we're going to do is primarily we're going to create like a height map. Okay, and then we're going to take that geometry. Okay, we're going to write out a few maps. We'll actually take the base geometry as well, export that, and then bake it and do a combination of stuff in Substance Painter. So the first thing that we need to solve is how to visualize textures onto this. So as I said, like you can't visualize color, but what you can visualize is a mask. Okay, because height fields primarily work with two things, right? Like you have height and you have masks. And what we're going to do is we're going to primarily work with masking and then just, extrude everything using a height node. Okay, so the way to work it is take a bind export and call it mask. And we can get rid of this. You don't need this. This is like it's already there, so it doesn't matter. And if you want to test if this is working, if you just take a constant value and plug it in, and if you increase this value, it will turn red. Okay, so there you go. So you have your mask working. Okay, so the first thing is like this is a combination of two things. Okay, like at a very basic level, you have like the star pattern and then you have tiles. Okay, and then on top of it, you have like a little bit of random coloring and then you have random angles to the whole thing. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is let's make like the star pattern. Okay. So I can press tab, come to patterns, and we'll pick up rounded stars. So the question is, how do you map it? And the way it works is like if you come to the globals, you'll have something called BB, which is essentially the bounding box. Okay. And this is sort of what works as UVs. Okay. So if I take this and plug it into UV and I plug this amount in here, and there you go, you'll get a star. Okay. So instead of UVs, this is what you use. Okay. It's pretty simple. And then the rest is the same. Like if you put a transform matrix in the middle, and I can make it like, let's do it 3 by 3, and there you go. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Now, I want to do a couple of things here. Like actually, I don't want to do too much. Okay. Like I want some amount of control at like surface level, at like SOP level. So what I'm going to do is I want to promote, like let's promote the random size, the roundness, and the softness. And along with that, I also want to control the intensity of the mask. So what I can do is I can take a multiply and I'll create a parameter. Okay, and I'm going to call it intensity. and we will multiply it. So what should happen is on the surface level, we have this node called intensity, which we can use to control the mask amount. Okay. Now, I am not going to build like a really complex WAP network, and put everything in there. You can, like, it's perfectly possible. You can have like, 50 nodes in a single WAP, because it's basically like texture building, right? But what instead I'm going to do is the height fields, the height field nodes give you a lot of ways to composite various masks together. So we're just going to use that, okay? Like, because it'll just keep everything at SOP level and make our life easier. Okay, now, along with this, if we want, we can also promote the scaling, so that if you want to, connect everything together, we can do that. Okay, so let's call this as stars. Okay, so the second thing we want is we want the tiles. So we'll create another height field WAP and we'll call it tiles. Okay, so again, I can get rid of this. We'll take a bind export, call it mask. And again, we'll need one parameter. So this stuff remains the same. I'll take a multiply. So I'll just sort of keep it ready. Okay. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take boxes. Okay, so we'll take boxes, and I can take this and plug it. Sorry, I can plug in the BB in here. Take a transform matrix in the middle and make it 3 by 3. Okay, and then plug that and plug this in here. And yeah, make sure that the parameter value is 1. So there we go. Okay. Okay, now we want the boxes, the size to be a little bit bigger. So about, I think this much is okay. Yeah. And yeah, I don't really need to promote too much here. I'll just promote the scaling. Okay, so that, we can control the tile amount. Now, the question is, how do we mix these together? Okay, so the first thing is I want the stars to be a little bit higher than the tiles when they get extruded. So I'm going to take the tiles and get the intensity down to say 0.5. Okay. Now the other thing is I eventually want to be able to export these masks as like black and white images over to Substance Painter so that I can use them. So what I can also do is I can take a copy layer. So you'll get something called height field copy layer. And you can copy these over to a second height field layer. Okay, and we'll call this tiles. So now what will happen is if you click on the eye over here, you'll see that you have height mask and you also have tiles. Okay, and I want to remap this to go back to 0 to 1. So take a remap, and we want to remap tile. Okay, it's tiles. Okay. And plug it in, and it'll like if you click on compute range, see, so it's from 0 to 5, but we want to go from 0 to 1. Okay, so that's pretty much okay. And we'll do the same thing with the stars. So the stars are at 1, which is okay. And we'll do like Control C, Control V, plug this in here, and this will be called stars. Okay. And then the way to mix them is you take a layer node. So you'll find something called as height field layer. And we can just plug these two together and just click this to add, and there you go. Okay, now this is too big. So yeah, let's do one thing. Let's come in here. We might have to promote, yeah, let's promote the star size as well. Okay, so let's take the star size, make it slightly smaller. Yeah, okay, this is good. And if we want, we can sort of like randomize the size a little bit as well. Okay. Okay, so this is, like the absolute basic. So the question that comes up is, how do you extrude this? Okay, like how do you give it height? Okay, so, and then the great thing about the height field layer is if you keep it on star, it'll just, like merge everything together. Okay. And the reason for doing it through layer is that, like this is at SOP level, so I don't have to go into WAPs, but it also gives you, all of these various like blending modes as well. Okay, so that makes life easier. Okay, and then you can also like, further on mix them if you want to. So this is all like really convenient to have it over here. Okay, so the way to give it height, like to an existing mask, is take a pattern node. So you'll find a height field pattern, change the pattern to ramp, and just keep it flat at 1. Okay, like the rest of it doesn't matter, and just plug it in. Now it'll give everything a height, and then you take the mask and plug it in over there, and there you go. You have a mask. Okay, now it looks terrible because there isn't enough resolution to this. So if you bring this down to say about 0.5, there you go. You have your, basic extrusion. And we can come in over here and, like if you want to adjust this, you can adjust this a bit more. Okay, like the tile height. And then if you adjust that, just make sure you sort of, recompute the range over here. This is the only thing that has to be redone. Okay, so for now, let's just go back to 2, okay, because we'll just sort of work everything and then bring it down lower, or let's keep it to 1. I think 1 is good enough. Okay, now we need to start doing a couple of additional things. Okay, the first thing is I want them to have like varying heights, so we want to multiply it by some kind of a randomization for tiles, and that's where this thing becomes very interesting. So I'm going to duplicate the tile node, and we're going to use a new node called random. So the way it works is pretty nice. Is within the boxes you'll have something called a seed, and if you just plug in the seed, it just gives you like black and white values, or actually they might be a little bit higher than that as well. But if you want to convert this into like random colored values, what you can do is you can take a random node and you take a random BRJ. Okay, I don't really know what they do, but the random BRJ gives you a better result, and it also has like an inbuilt seed value. Okay, so I can take a random BRJ, and you can see like this has like an offset value in there. So you take the seed and connect it to seed, and you plug this out, and there you go. Okay, and the nice part is if you do an offset, see, it gives you like different results. And if we want, we can also connect it to a fit range. So if you want to like further control like how much you want. So what I can do is I can promote these guys and plug this in here. But what I don't want is I don't want them to be like full blocks like this. Okay. So what I can do further is I can multiply it with the basic boxes. Okay. So I can take this and multiply that. Okay. So what this will do is you'll get like, random colored boxes. Now in our case, these are not random colored. They're just random heights. Eventually, what you'll get out of it is just a grayscale image, but you can take that grayscale image into Substance Painter, put it through a gradient, and like recolor it. So that makes life easier. Okay, so just plug this in here and come back, and there you go. So what I can do with this is let's do a copy. So do Control-C, Control-V, and we'll call this random. And we can like, let me just disconnect this temporarily. And we can multiply it with this. Okay, so I can take another layer node. So think of this as like your composite tree. Okay, like you're working in Nuke or something. And then I can take this guy here and that guy there. And I can do a multiply. So there you go. So you get like different heights. Now the problem that happens is when you multiply it, the mask or this new layer that is coming in also gets multiplied. So the values get really negated. Okay. So we will have to bring it in separately. So what I can do here is I can just bring in the mask, and then I can do another layer just for random. Okay. So I can like take this here and take that there and just keep it to add and take random. So what will happen is the random value won't get multiplied then. Like that will come in just the way it is. And if you visualize it, see, there you go. So now what's happening is you have like, different heights. And you still have all of your other things here. So if you want to sort of like, control how much this should be, so you can sort of, control that. And the overall intensity of it can be controlled as well. Okay. Okay, now let's do the final sort of complicated bit with this, which is, let's say you want them to have like a slight bit of slope or an angle. Like I did it a little too extreme, but just like if you want a tile to be, you know, slightly up or down or something like that. So what I can do is I can duplicate this. So let's call this random, and we're going to call this as random rotation. So I'm going to jump in here, and yeah, we don't need this. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this as well. Okay, so if we want to sort of just give it a slope, we can use a ramp. Okay, like that's pretty straightforward, right? So if I just take a ramp parameter and I'm going to do a vector to float, we'll take another transform matrix because this has to be 3 by 3. Okay, so I'm going to take the position here, connect this. We'll take the X and plug it into ramp, and if this comes out to the mask, you'll get a gradient. Get the blur to 0. Okay, so this is fine. Let's take this and make this 3 by 3 as well. So what I can do is I can double click here. I can just plug this into the scale over here. Okay, so we'll get this. Now what we can do is we can take this value over here. Okay, like let me get rid of that. Okay, we can take the seed value here and we can actually, you know, use that to control rotation. Okay, so let me just pull this back a little bit. So what I can do is I can take a fit range and I can plug in the seed value over here, okay, to the value, and I can take, let's say something like minus 90 and plus 90. And we want to control, like the rotation happens in the Z axis. Okay. So we'll take a float to vector and we're going to control the Z axis and plug this into rotation, and you'll get that. And what this does is, again, we'll just plug this in through the multiply over here. Again, if we want, we can do a fit range here as well, so that we can, you know, like further control it. So again, we'll promote these two. And we don't, like, this layer doesn't need to be saved. We just need it for multiplication. Okay, so just take a multiply again. Okay, oh sorry, just take a layer node again. Okay, so take a height field layer and okay, let's bring this in and that. So we get this and change this to multiply. See, so what you'll get is that. Okay, and then this again goes back here. So if we look at our height field pattern, see, there you go. So you get like these nice little, you know, random rotations on the whole thing. And the nice thing is if I come back into my random rotation and we have our, what we want is we want some way to sort of change the seed value. Okay, so we can get different results. So what I can try is I can take an add. So let's try to do an add constant and let's see. Okay, let's try to like give it integer values. Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, we might have to do something a little more. Okay, like just directly changing the seed is not working. So what I can do is I can put it through a random BRJ. But what that does is, see, we can't have grayscale values. Okay, we want the seed to be like black and white, because if you have grayscale values, the rotation sort of does this. Okay, like you get these really weird sort of cut marks over there. So what we do is we take the random BRJ and then put it through a round. Okay, we say round to integer and sort of plug that in. So it will give me the same result. But the nice thing is now we have like a seed value available to us. So it's a little bit of, you know, slightly longer process, but it works. Okay, and yeah, let's promote this as well. So let's do minimum maximum to be a little bit like that. Yeah, okay. And then I can just take the height field pattern and up it. Yeah, okay. I'm doing it a little extreme so that, we get some variety. But there you go. So now we have everything that we need. So we have our height and mask and star, style and random. Like this is everything that we have. Okay, like if we clear the mask, we'll be able to visualize this stuff later. Okay, now comes the final thing, which is I want to sort of distort this a little bit, like give it a little bit of, like let's break it up a little bit. Okay, so the simplest way to do it is, okay, another thing, if you feel like the masks are too sort of harsh, you can blur them a little bit, right? So you can just take a blur here. You can do like a height field mask blur and drop it in the middle. Okay, so you'll get like a little bit of, like a blurring over here. And you can do the same thing here as well. See, so just a little bit of softness, so it's not like absolutely sharp. Okay, so what I can do is, let's take a height field noise. And I'm going to plug it in over here. And I want to sort of give it like cracks. So what I can do is, I can just take a Worley F2, F1, which will give me this. And I can lower the size to, let's do about 90 or something. Yeah, so let's get this down to about 90 and let's get this down to about like 70 or 80. Yeah, I think this is good. Okay, and then what you can do is take a distort by layer. Okay, so take a distort by layer and plug this in and plug that in. And take the displace value to about 6. And there you go. So you get these nice little crack patterns over everything. But the problem that happens now is, I'll just lower it down to 5, is if we try to visualize this. Okay, so I'm going to take a height field visualize. And we'll just do compute range. This doesn't matter. Okay, I'm just visualizing things. I'm going to get rid of all of this. Make it like dark. And then here I'll pick up tiles. Okay. Now the problem that's happening, or let's say if you pick up stars, is you'll see like the star isn't, like the mask isn't breaking up the way the height map is breaking up. Because the height map is only distorting the height layer. Okay. So we can try to distort more, but it only takes one at a time. Okay, which is the problem. So you need to sort of do this 4 times. Okay, like in order for it to affect everything, you need it to go through like, each and every layer that you have. So what needs to be done is you take this, then you take another height field distort, plug in the same thing here. This one will affect stars. Okay, and the same thing comes here. Then we take another height field distort. This is the irritating bit. Okay. And the same thing. This will be, let's do tiles, and then height field distort, and this will be random. Okay, and then what I can do is I can just take this, we'll right click here, take the display scale, do copy parameter, take all 3 and do paste relative reference. And now if we plug it in, it should be better. See, so now the star is distorting, the way the mask, the way the height map is distorted. Okay, so I can use this, and then I can, let's put in the tiles over here. See, and then let's put in random over there, or let's remove the tiles. See, so you have random. Okay, so we have everything in place, which is good. Okay, so now let's export this. So I'll just save this. Okay, so the first thing is, let's just come here to the height field and we'll make it, let's try 0.4, which should give me enough detail. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to export 2 things, right? I'm going to export the maps that we have. Okay. And then I'm also going to export the mesh itself. So first we'll just export the maps. Okay. So I'm going to take an output. So take a height field output, and this will be RGB. So the height map should always be exported to 32-bit. Okay, because this is, I don't know, might be just an Octane thing, but if you don't do a 32-bit output, you get banding in your displacement. If you're not going to do displacement, it's fine. But if you're going to do displacement, the height field causes problems. Like if it's not 32-bit. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and I've actually exported them, so I won't re-export them. Okay, but I'll just show you like what needs to be done. So we have like a height map here. So make sure that you do like, height EXR. Okay, so that one will be EXR, and then just save this here to like height and height. Okay, and then make sure it's kept to auto remap. So it will automatically put it between 0 and 1. And then you do the same thing for the other like masks that you have. So for the stars, for the tile and the random. And the star, tile and random don't need to be 32-bit. They can be standard 8-bit. That's okay. Okay. And the resolution, I had kept it to 2K, but 2K is less. So you can go to 4K. Like if you're doing like proper production work, you can go as high as you want. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is one thing. Okay, now the other thing you need to do is I'm going to convert this to a height field. Sorry, I'm going to convert it to polygons. So this is going to be pretty heavy. Like if I look at this, this is about 6 million polygons. And let's just scale it down to like 10 by 10. This is 1000 by 1000. So I'm going to take this and transform it and scale it down to 0.01. And then I'm going to make a simple grid. Now, the one thing that, always irritates me is eventually we're going to bake all the data from here onto this grid, but I'm not going to do it in Houdini. I'm going to do it in Substance Painter. Okay, like honestly, if you're like doing this professionally, use Substance Painter or something. It does baking a lot better. That is information I got from my friend who actually works in the gaming industry, because he's like, Houdini is decent, but if you're doing like proper professional level work, Substance Painter is a lot better. Or you can use something like Marmoset Toolbag or whatever, like, use like a proper baking tool set, which is, that's its job. So the problem that happens here is with UVs. So if I take a UV project, so this is the final thing we have to do before we go to Substance Painter. Okay, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to do initialize. And then we'll do an attribute from map. So I'm just going to type in map and we'll take attribute from map. And what happens is, just keep this to points or something. Yeah, okay, sorry, we don't have enough points here. So make it 512 by 512. We can lower this later. Okay, but this is just for visualization work. Yeah, so this is our UV map and you can see that it's all flipped and crazy. Okay, and if you assign the same thing here, this has UVs. Okay, the result is going to be completely different. See, so this is the result. So we're getting like, this is proper, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we look at this guy, see, this is like this. So you need to adjust the UV project. Otherwise, when you take it over there, it's going to bake it, but the maps that you're getting in from Houdini are not going to match. Okay, so it gets all crazy. So this is a value that you can simply just remember. Okay, the rotation has to be 270 in the y-axis and minus 90 in the z-axis. Okay, and then it will match. So when you're just exporting like a simple grid and you want to bake in like your height field data onto it, this is your UV map setting. So just remember that bit. Okay, and then I can just take this. Okay, like I don't need this, but I can just take like this scaled down version here and I can right click here, do save geometry, and I can save it out as OBJ. So I'm guessing you know how to do that. Just click there and yeah, just save it. I already saved this. It comes out pretty huge. Like this is about 800 MB, but yeah, just save it as an OBJ and then the basic grid also you save it as an OBJ. Okay, so this is pretty much it. Okay, so this is as far as, like building the basic setup in Houdini. So the next setup we're going to do in Substance Painter, which is actually going to be pretty simple. Like once you have this much data, Substance Painter works, very easily. Now, another thing you can do is like, if you want this to be like fully procedural and everything, then you can just, like come up here and like you can start to connect these things together. Okay, like I can take this styling, like right click here, do parameter, paste relative reference, and all of that stuff. Just makes, like, if you want this to be like a proper asset. Okay, let's do one final thing which I kind of forgot. Okay, is let's say if I want to take these stars and I also want the stars to have like a little bit of random rotation. So I can actually do that. Like I'll take the value from here. Like I can take this and I'm going to take like all of this. Okay, let's do Control C and we'll come into stars. Let me just zoom out a bit. Yeah, let's do one thing. I'm visualizing all the way till the bottom, which is probably not a good idea. Yeah, let's just visualize this. Okay, and then I can just take this and plug it in over there. And what that will do is you'll get like, random rotation for your stars. But yeah, that way you have like a properly, randomized tiled pattern. So if we come down here to our height field visualize, we should see something a little bit better. Okay, so the next lesson, we'll take a look at the substance painter setup. Okay.